Thank you so much for inviting us to share on behalf of the National Park Service during this session. My name is Makarick, and I'm going to tag team this presentation with Sarah Whipple. We want to start with an overview of our organization and policies just to set the stage. And like other bureaus in the Department of the Interior, the National Park Service has Washington-level offices and directorates that provide service-wide support and guidance. And we have 7 regional offices that cover and support the parks within the 12 unified DOI regions. And the National Park Service itself has 423 individual units and over 19 different naming designations, including parks and seashores and recreational areas and monuments and battlefields and historic sites and trails. And each park unit has their own enabling legislation. And I want to highlight that as an organization, we're very decentralized, with superintendents responsible for the administration of their unit. And this is particularly important because at the Washington level and even at the regional level, we don't always know the full extent of what park units are doing. We know what projects are funded, and we know we can query the research permit data system, but park staff may have ongoing efforts that we are unaware of. Park managers strive to find the balance between the preservation of resources and visitor use and enjoyment, which is our dual mandate. And similar to other land management bureaus, park staff face an array of conservation challenges, from drought and erosion to extreme fire and weather events to invasive species. And the National Park Service is experiencing incredible increases in visitation, with over 237 million visitors each year, and these numbers are increasing. For some parks, visitation has doubled in just a few years, and this comes with many challenges, but also opportunity pertinent to this topic. We can reach a large number of visitors through our park staff and our website, which had over 117 million online visitors in 2020. For this federal effort, we can help engage the public and park staff to participate. These core concepts from our 2006 management policies guide our actions, and we strive to maintain all of the components of ecosystems within parks, but also manage them in the context of the larger systems that parks are embedded in, rather than as isolated islands. And our policies state that the NPS will not attempt to solely preserve individual species, except when they're threatened or endangered. The focus really is on maintaining processes and naturally evolving park ecosystems. So natural change is recognized. Parks are working toward defining desired conditions, and we're also working towards stewardship in the context of climate change and using tools like the Resist, Accept, Direct framework and other adaptation tools and technologies. The Stewardship and Science framework provides a basis for strategic thinking and planning, and also helps prioritize natural resource investments and the on-the-ground activities. These pillars allow us to keep an eye on the day-to-day activities and needs park managers face, but also allow us to adapt and respond to change with a focus on long-term ecological integrity. They encourage us to expand our audiences and partners, elevate the visibility of science, and increase the awareness of park values and resource issues. They also allow us to engage in new initiatives and opportunities, but remind us to consider them in the context of our core work. I'm now going to turn it over to Sarah Whipple, and she'll give an overview of the NPS Inventory and Monitoring Program.
I'm now going to provide a brief history on the National Park Service Inventory and Monitoring Division. I&M started in 1998 and included baseline inventory reports and literature, base cartography, geology, soils, vegetation maps, species lists, water quality and quantity, and air quality. Inventories, from the National Park Service perspective, helps us understand the range of natural resources in and around parks, whereas monitoring helps us understand how these resources are doing over the long term. I&M 1.0 was not as directly useful for specific natural resource management and questions as had hoped, and so in 2020, Inventories 2.0 began, and this emphasizes direct integration into park natural resource management. In Inventory 2.0, all requests must be to inform explicit resource management actions, decisions, or formal planning processes about natural resources. And this translates statements of need into statements of work, which leverages scientific expertise in the inventory program, park, network, and other NPS programs. Across the country, more than 280 parks with significant natural resources have been grouped into 32 networks. Network boundaries are based on geography and the natural resource characteristics parks have in common. Parks and networks work together to plan, design, and conduct inventories and long-term monitoring. Today, all I&M networks collect, analyze, and provide park managers with reliable scientific information about key park resources known as vital signs. Vital signs are elements and processes in park ecosystems that help indicate the overall health or condition of park resources. Just as people monitor their vital signs such as blood pressure and pulse, the parks monitor selected vital signs to help them understand the condition and trends of park natural resources. The 32 I&M networks have established vital signs monitoring in over 280 parks, and they monitor physical resources and processes such as air, water, climate, fire, erosion, and biological attributes such as species and biological communities, and ecological processes such as disturbance and productivity. Vital signs data allow us to better understand natural processes and the results of management actions and help guide parks in the successful protection and use of park resources. I'm now going to talk a little bit more about Inventories 2.0. This program is requiring projects to have explicit action or decision, which allows us to set the spatial and taxonomic domains of the inventory, not just based on the spatial scale of the parks. One thing to highlight is that every member of our team is a solid scientist. We value getting the science right, not having resource management decisions based on the best available information, but solid, scientifically defensible estimates. As a new program, we are meeting all the open science and other laws and policies for science used in decision-making, even though these laws and policies are not being enforced or followed agency-wide. We aren't funding single-use data. One example of this is our insistence on recording search effort events and inferable absences. We have several requests for inventories to repeat surveys from 5, 10, or 20 years ago to show decline in small mammals due to pythons or declines in native bees. Because those prior surveys didn't record levels of effort or sufficient details of their methods, there simply is no way to repeat them, so that differences in numbers are due to differences in the populations of interest and not due to differences in effort. We will do better, and that also reinforces our emphasis on eco-informatics, the structure and documentation of the data and metadata products necessary for future use and for use in conjunction with our managed areas and other data sets. Some trade-offs of this program is that we're collecting new data to directly address the triggering resource management decision, whereas we're not collecting inventory information to fill gaps in the existing information data that can address future related resource management issues. Secondly, these have to be tightly focused projects versus projects that can answer future questions or have additional reference. I'm now going to highlight the inventory project that's most relevant to this network. And this is the Inventory Pollinator project, which is a cooperative agreement with Colorado State University under Dr. Gillian Bowser and the Pollinator Hotshots, which were previously an NSF-funded research collaboration network themselves. The goal of the Inventory Pollinator project is to inventory pollinators, more so bees, but also butterflies, beetles, moths, etc., across 40+ parks over the next 5 years. And this 40 park list will probably turn into over 100 units over the next 5 years. This project is developing a modular protocol to sample pollinators across different park units, such as different habitat types and focus taxa, and focus on their management objectives tied to that inventory. Something that we really want to emphasize is this is not a generic pollinator inventory at each park level. We're not just going to do a baseline of species diversity within each of these park units, as we don't have the personnel and that doesn't have the direct resource management action or decision tied to the specific habitat. So some examples of this that we hope to see and hope to help work with parks on is pollinator diversity comparisons across degraded or restored areas. Another example is the question of presence or absence, or phenology of listed species, to minimize the impacts of vegetation management. When it comes to the process of the pollinator inventory project, the data collection is twofold. Before even going into the field, the Pollinator hotshots are collecting historical data, which includes species occurrence data sets from community science, citizen science databases, and natural history collections, as well as local park collections. We're also looking at climate data and phenology data to better inform species emergence, patterns of green-up, that can then help us with the identification of target habitats and inform the sample design. Second, we'll be going in the field ourselves and doing presence-absence surveys looking at abundance as well, and performing rapid species assessments to curate a long-term data set of observations for these parks. And all field sampling will be non-invasive using catch and release efforts, high-resolution photography, and other techniques such as extracting species eDNA for identification will be used when possible. We recognize, especially in a network like this, that non-collection-based sampling is atypical. When necessary, targeted sampling that involves lethal sampling may occur, but it must be justified through the inventory request and subsequent management objectives achieved by collecting lethal samples. With this presentation, we wanted to highlight some Park Service examples that are not related to the Inventory and Monitoring Division when it comes to bee work in the parks. The National Park Service is very decentralized, with individual parks doing many projects their own way, and often no awareness beyond that individual park. These are a few examples of such work that we are aware of. The first comes from the Great Lakes region, which includes work on eDNA and native bees, forest bees, landscape corridors, and more. The Alaska region has had some commendable work done by Dr. Jessica Ricken, understanding bee composition and trends in Alaska and the Pacific Northwest, as well as her significant contributions to education and interpretation materials. And lastly, we have C&O Canal, which has done long-term monitoring to identify temporal trends in community composition, abundance, and richness of forest ephemeral bees. Now, these are some examples of current pollinator inventory requests that we will be fulfilling with the Pollinator Hotshot project. First comes from Crater Lake, which is looking at the importance of road margin flora versus main meadows to pollinators, as well as post-fire and fire line impacts on meadow habitats and bee as well as butterfly species. Next, we have Yosemite and Sequoia Kings Canyon, which are looking at alpine meadows that act as climate refugia for alpine plants and bees. And last, we have Dinosaur National Monument, which is looking at pollinators under different grazing management and the priority areas that are needed to manage for pollinators, specifically the western bumblebee, Bombus occidentalis. So to end this presentation, we want to provide some National Park Service needs and goals, as well as some questions that we have for the network and for other bee researchers. First, are there specific habitats or sites parks should target for when it comes to restoration for bees? Second, are there specific areas in a park where management actions need to change? Third, how can we ensure species and habitats are protected during wildfire risk reduction activities? Fourth, what at-risk species trends are there and what management actions are needed? Next, how can landscape corridors between protected areas help with species conservation? And lastly, we want to highlight that we are not developing a national program for bee monitoring, so let's collaborate on this and help get the best science that we can, because that's something that we certainly see from our perspectives of the IMD and BRD divisions. So thank you all so much for your time and listening to all the efforts the Park Service has done when it comes to bees. Here's our contact information for both Lori and myself. I also dropped Dr. Tom Philippi and Dr. Tracy Ziegler's contact information. They are the Inventories 2.0 co-program managers of the project, so they are supervising myself as well as all the other inventory requests that we will see through Inventories 2.0 initiative. Thank you. Have a good rest of your day.